Pokemon Shining Pearl. Anybody remember this game? No? Well, it just came out a few months ago. Why are you laughing? I'm serious. It just came out. You for real don't remember Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl? Well, I can't say I blame you. Let's cut to the chase. I'm not sure why I made this video. Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl are some of the most soulless Pokemon games I've played, and that's becoming a real trend for the franchise here of late. There's inherent fun in the Pokemon formula, which is still felt here, but never has the need for a shakeup been felt more than now. This set of remakes are boring and are put to shame by how wonderful the Hoenn remakes proved to be. To be honest with you, those are my favorite Pokemon games of all time, but this is an uninspired and unchanged regurgitation of one of Pokemon's weakest generations. There was a real opportunity to transform this distant generation into something spectacular, but instead, Game Freak bucked the assignment to a company called ILCA to churn out a standard and dull remake. So why is this video so long then? Well, I'm not sure. Pokemon is a franchise that inspires me to ramble, and I figured it might be fun to create a more laid-back look at these games, as well as the original Diamond and Pearl. So, if you're down to hear me rant and rave about Pokemon games, then stay tuned for a lengthy commentary on Pokemon Shining Pearl. Going into these games, I remembered a deep fondness for this generation. It was never my favorite, despite it being host to my favorite set of starter Pokemon, as well as my favorite Pokemon of all time. However, I was really excited to re-experience it all over again, as I booted it up once more, eager to see what changes and improvements had been made. Rowan greeted me, and after resisting the urge to play as Dawn, I chose my generic trainer boy and named him NopNapNarp. Soon the time came to name my rival, and since Barry is kind of the worst rival of all time, I wasn't sure what to nickname him. His only trait is that he's impatient and he runs everywhere, so I just called him the Flash and moved on with life. Teleporting into my loft in Twin Leaf Town, I was shocked to see this message telling me that the Nintendo Switch was the latest video game console. Hell, you know times are tough when you can't even get a PS5 in the Pokemon universe. I'd want to leave too if all I had was a Switch. After getting kicked out by Mom and meeting up with the Flash, we head towards Lake Verity in search of a legendary lake Pokemon. Soon the time will come to make the most important choice in all Pokemon games. Which starter do you use? After giving it a lot of thought, I concluded that Turtwig was the best choice. Given the mountainous surroundings of Sinnoh, a grass-type Pokemon to cut through all the rock, ground, and water types seemed like a good idea. Hell, the first gym is rock. Turtwig would shred Rourke to tears. Besides, Turtwig has always been one of my favorite starter Pokemon. He's just so cute with that little twig on his head. Absolutely adorable. So, needless to say, when the moment came to choose which of these Pokemon I journeyed through Sinnoh with once more, I had no hesitation in choosing Chimchar. What's that? You like fire Pokemon? Well, that's too bad if you're a kid growing up in Sinnoh. If you want a fire-type Pokemon, you have two options. Choose Chimchar or catch a Ponyta later. Mazda really said we're only gonna have one other fire line available in this region and then had the stones to make it Ponyta. Unreal. This lack of variety forces your hand as a trainer if you want some real firepower on your team. And who wouldn't? I remember playing this game for the first time and choosing Turtwig only to be mystified later by my inability to find any fire type to round out my team. Except Ponyta. And Ponyta sucks. Not evolving into Rapidash until level 42? Are you serious? Who could be bothered? I understand that Sinnoh isn't the most conducive region for fire-type Pokemon, but to exclude such a popular typing by such a large amount was a bad choice. Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl had a chance to fix this by expanding the regional decks, but I guess Game Freak didn't give consent to that. A chance to fix one of the original game's biggest flaws thrown to the wayside. And that might as well be the tagline for these games. That's why I decided to name my Chimchar Mandatory, because, well, we need fire. Don't worry though, this isn't going to be the standard Infernape, Floatzel, Lucario, Luxray, Garchomp, and Staraptor team that I know you used all those years ago. After getting a tour from Dawn and going all Billy Joel on our mom by telling her we're moving out, we head to Route 202 to start our journey proper. Dawn shows us how to catch a Pokemon, regardless of whether you've already done it or not. I thought Sword and Shield handled this perfectly, but now we're right back to wasting the player's time. Before we get into some trainer battles, I figured it was best to add some new team members so Mandatory doesn't get lonely. I first encountered a Bidoof and took a few minutes to mull things over. For years, this meme of a Pokemon has been referred to as the quintessential HM slave. BDSP handles HMs differently though, so this little guy has been freed from his bonds, which feels satisfying. Given his newfound freedom, I figured catching him was the right thing to do so that he could be a part of something bigger than himself. Oh shit, I killed it. No matter, here's another one. I actually managed to catch this one and nicknamed it Freedom. Bidoof and its evolution B-Barrel can rest easy now that HMs have been mitigated here in BDSP. I won't be making it an official team member since its stats are kinda lousy, but hey, it's the thought that counts. I also encountered a Starly while out and about, and let me tell you, it's a miracle I won't be using one for this playthrough. Believe it or not, Starly is my favorite Pokemon of all time. In the time leading up to the release of Diamond and Pearl, I found myself feeling too old for the franchise at the ripe age of 12. I loved playing through Emerald, but I figured it was time to move on to hobbies more appropriate for my age. After all, Pokemon was a thing for kids, and I was about to be a teenager. It was a bittersweet feeling, but I was ready to let go of this part of my childhood. But then, these games came out. And I remember seeing pictures of the 3 starters and Starly somewhere online and thought, okay, never mind, I'm back. This little bird lured me back into the franchise and it hasn't let go since. After begging my mom to get me the game along with a new DS, thanks mom by the way, because I know you're watching, I was ready for Sinnoh. I remember finally catching a Starly and being so excited, realizing then that Pokemon would be a part of my life for years to come. It's why I still considered BDSP to be one of the best games I played in 2021, despite it being such a flop overall. I love Pokemon, and these games will always provide that comfort. So in short, I figured Starly could tag along with us for a little bit. Jubilife is weird. It's one of Sinnoh's biggest cities and is full of technical achievement and innovation. It's basically the Silicon Valley of Sinnoh, yet it isn't home to a gym badge. In fact, there really isn't much here at all except for the Poketch, its upgrades, and a few battles at the trainer school. After you leave the city, there really isn't much of a reason to come back except for in the post-game to check out the global trade station. In this way, Jubilife comes off as a grandiose version of Sand Gem Town, which is fine, it's just weird that it isn't a bigger part of your journey. It's just a stepping stone between Oriball and Canalave. After making some young trainers cry at school and collecting our town map, we go on the hunt for clowns at the behest of the Pokéetch president. As I mentioned a moment ago, we get the Poketch here, and boy does this thing feel like an ancient relic here on the Switch. This piece of tech worked perfectly on the 3DS since the bottom screen could always be dedicated to featuring it. Shuffling through the apps was fast and the touchscreen interactivity was used cleverly. Here though, it feels like something that's been tacked on. Touchscreens aren't a new innovation anymore, they are the standard for handheld devices, and so it fails to wow in that regard. On top of that, it's confined into the corner given the Switch's lack of a second screen. This makes it feel obtrusive alongside of useless. It's a good thing it can be hidden away then, so that the player doesn't have to interact with it at all if they find it cumbersome or annoying. Before heading out towards Oribal, I opted to nab my second official team member, Budu. Its grass moves should prove more than capable of defeating the Flash's Piplup and Rourke's Rock-type team. I've decided to nickname this Budu Piggybacking, as a knock against this generation's new entries to the national dex. It won't be the only time I discuss this generation's Pokédex, by the way, but let me explain as we clean up the trainers along Route 203. The 4th generation brought 107 new Pokemon into existence, but it's got to be one of the most heavily scrutinized entries ever, and for good reason. For now, let's focus on the new Pokemon that piggyback off of existing mons. 29 of the 107 new Pokemon, or 27%, are either pre-evolutions or new evolutions to existing Pokemon. Over a quarter of the new Pokemon don't feel as exciting as they should, because they lack the same surprise factor of brand new entries. Seeing Pokemon like Magmar, Dusclops, and Yanma get new evolutions in a generation without any reason or context for it feels kinda like a ripoff. After all, if Electabuzz can evolve, why the hell did we never see that happen in Kanto? Generation 2 did something similar with baby Pokemon and a few new evolutions, but at least the number of them was limited to 18%. They were also introduced mostly to promote the game's new breeding mechanics and evolution methods. Here, it feels arbitrary. It's almost like a precursor to mega evolutions and new forms. Mazuda and company must have felt that the new designs alone were enough, but without proper context and a lack of access, they fell on their face. Sinnoh's Pokédex feels cheapened as a result, especially considering many of these Pokemon aren't available until after you complete the main game. This is more so a problem with the 4th generation rather than these remakes, but it's an issue that could have been addressed here if more creative freedom had been granted. I wish ILCA would have sprinkled in some of these existing Pokemon along with the items to evolve them into their new forms throughout the game. Like, how cool would it have been to find an Elekid here on Route 203, raise it into an Electabuzz, and then get a chance to evolve it further into Electivire before the curtain falls on your adventure. Seeing Paul use an Electivire in the anime was so cool. He's my favorite Pokemon NPC, by the way. But getting these games with no easy way to use one was a huge letdown following an epic introduction to it. I wish they would have taken this approach here in BDSP, but they didn't. So another of the game's original issues is allowed to run rampant, severely limiting your options for team building once more. The Oribal Gate. That exists. It's here. We're going through it. You get the hidden move screen here. That's it. Oribal City is one of my favorite across the Pokemon universe. I love how the entire town is built around this concept of mining, from the nearby caves to the fossil center and the brown hues that make up the dirt roads. It comes together wonderfully and is one of the franchise's best in my eyes. We can't head right to the gym. First, we must venture into the Oribal mine to locate the gym leader, Rourke. I like this area. Sinnoh has a lot of deep and winding caves, especially those comprising Mount Coronet and the Grand Underground to a higher extent. Therefore, you want to introduce the concept of moving through caves early in the experience, but you don't want new players to get lost. The Oribal Gate earlier and this mineshaft now do a great job of accomplishing this feat. There's no chance for new players to get lost while also lending credibility to the prominence of caves in this region. Rourke also demonstrates how to use Rock Smash, which is a decent inclusion for youngsters and new players. Heading back to the surface, and it's time for our first official gym battle. Rourke is one of my favorite gym leaders in Sinnoh. In fact, I guess he's probably my favorite, even though he uses one of my least favorite typings, Rock. He embodies the hardened but welcoming attitude of Orball while also capturing the essence of the town, mining. I also love his team composition. It's always nice when a first gym leader has 3 Pokemon instead of 2, and including a fossil Pokemon on his team is fun. Geodude is your standard rock type, Onix has some decent stats since it doesn't evolve on its own, and Cranidos can make short work of a lot of Pokemon. Of course, Rourke has to choose to attack to actually do so, so I was able to sweep his team with Chimchar's Power-Up Punch, which surprised me. Despite my admiration for Rourke, I remember it being disappointing to see a Rock-type user as the first gym leader for the 3rd time in 4 generations. It makes sense given 2/3 of the starters will be strong against it, and with the dual typings, fire fighting starters can hold their own too. It's a good typing to choose to ease in new players, but it was getting stale by this 4th generation. As we make our way north out of Jubilife, we come face to face with Team Galactic for the first time. I don't want to front load my thoughts on them, so I'll bypass this early analysis by just saying, they don't make a good first impression. There's nothing distinct about them, they don't accomplish anything, and they don't really hint at what's to come. Hell, after beating them, Rowan himself seems completely unconcerned, as he instead elects to talk more about Pokemon evolution. They make evolution the primary focus of Rowan's research, and that makes sense given all the new evolutions and pre-evolutions I mentioned a few moments ago. Apparently, he's been out exploring other regions for a few years, and perhaps he's the one that discovered those new evolution methods and those new Pokemon, such as Rhyperior and Mismagius. I wish this was elaborated on more in the game, as for now, I'm just kinda speculating. After this, a nearby trainer gifts us some ball capsules following our spectacular victory over Team Galactic, but more on those in a bit. After quickly making our way through the Ravaged Path, we arrive in the upper section of Route 204. We battle a few trainers here, including a double battle against some twins, each using Apache Risu. I've always had a soft spot for the design of this Pokemon, and I actually used it myself on my team while playing through Brilliant Diamond. Anyway, while we have a moment, I figured this was as good a spot as any to talk about the controversial chibi designs for the characters. Yeah, the chibis. These models were heavily scrutinized after the game's official reveal. A lot of us had become accustomed to the tall boy and tall girl life afforded by recent generations, and going back seemed questionable at best. On top of that, the models seemed to border on the uncanny valley. However, they've been cleaned up here in the final release, and I think they look fine. It doesn't bother me too much, and I got used to it much faster than I had expected. I don't really have a whole lot else to say about it. I just know that a lot of people were upset about the models, so I figured I'd share my 2 cents. They're fine. They don't bother me. Is that good? Is that good, deep, rich analysis? Is that what you came to this video to hear? The chibis are fine. Well, that's what I think anyway. Route 204 gives way to Floroma Town, and now that we have a moment of downtime, I figured I'd try out some of these ball capsules that we just got. Customization has had a role in Pokemon games since the start, but has only become more notable in recent generations. You could nickname your Pokemon all the way back in Generation 1, and from there they added more options, such as being able to play as a girl starting in Generation 2's Crystal version, and Generation 3 had secret bases, which really marked the first big example of customization in Pokemon games. True character customization wouldn't get kicked off for a few more generations, but now that we've experienced that, these ball capsules seem pretty bland and inconsequential. Hell, it's even a step down from secret bases from the previous generation. Essentially, ball capsules let you decorate your Pokeballs with stickers, which results in an explosion of colors, shapes, and patterns every time you send a Pokemon into battle. Look, this sort of thing really isn't my cup of tea, but even if it's yours, you must admit that this is pretty lackluster. Even if you design the most elegant and beautiful design, we're talking about an animation that plays out over the span of 1 second. Do you really feel that good about it? Does it really fill you with any sort of excitement? I can't imagine most people will say yes to those questions. As soon as I saw this feature in the game's trailers, I knew BDSP were doomed to be boring. They had nothing new to show us, and so we're forced to shovel all of these forgettable features into the trailers just to show us something. Do you remember that long break between the first trailer and then I think the next one didn't come until like July or August? It was like 5 months with no trailers. This is why they had nothing to show us. I mean, I'm kind of being harsh here. If you're a fan of these things, by all means, go off in the comments below, ripping me a new one over this. Let your voice be heard. And as for you, yes you, watching this video right now, scroll down and see if you can find a comment defending ball capsules. If you find it, please leave that person a like, because that person deserves it for besting me on my own video. It's also here in Floroma Town where I'll be picking up my third team member. In the bottom left corner of the town stands 2 NPCs who search your system to see if you've played Sword and Shield and Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee. If you have, they will give you 2 Pokemon as a reward. One of those is our next team member. So, meet Bruh the Jirachi. I'm calling it Bruh because I can't believe the game is just handing me a mythical Pokemon for no reason 1 badge into the game. You won't give us an Elekid or a Rhyhorn early to get those new evolutions introduced in this generation, but you will give us fucking Mew and Jirachi. Unreal. I'm not a big fan of events that gifted people mythical Pokemon, but I'm also not a fan of being given such a powerful Mon so early in the game for no reason. Because of this, I figured, what the hell, let me use one. They want me to have it, so I might as well use it. By the way, you can also get a Manaphy earlier in the game via the mystery gift if you pre-ordered. So you could be standing here with a team of your starter and 3 mythicals. I just don't see how this is good for Pokemon. But you know what? If they're gonna give it to me, like I said, I must be intended to use it. So welcome to the team, Bruh. Before we can venture any further on our journey, we have to make a pit stop at the Valley Windworks to deal with Team Galactic once more. After thrashing the goon outside the building, we must return to Floroma Town to progress. This isn't Animal Crossing, so I take the liberty of trampling all the beautiful flowers to get there quicker. We defeat 2 more goons and are gifted some honey from a local condiment dealer. He tells us that we can spread it on trees to attract various Pokemon to it, but more on that much later. For now, we return to the Valley Windworks to clear it out. After defeating 2 trainers, we come face to face with Galactic Commander Mars, who uses a Zubat and a Purugly. It wasn't until this very fight that I realized I forgot to mention that Chimchar had evolved into Monferno. It happened after defeating Rourke, but I kind of forgot to document it. And I only bring it up now because, damn, this chain of Pokemon is just so good. Monferno is one of my favorite middle starter evolutions visually, and the firefighting combo typing is just so good. There's always been a meme around Pokemon that all you need to beat Ruby and Sapphire is Blaziken. And the same can almost be said about Infernape if it weren't for the champion. This is super apparent in the early game as its fighting moves cover against normal and rock types, while its fire type moves deal with grass and bugs. All four of these typings are common early in Pokemon games, so it's not surprising to see Monferno flourish. Beating Mars doesn't prove too difficult, and the only thing she reveals is that Team Galactic was harvesting power from the Windworks to use it later. It's all very vague and doesn't foreshadow much of anything. After clearing out the Windworks, it's possible to find the Pokemon Drifloon right outside, but only on Fridays. I kinda like this, but it's yet another encounter method that isn't super player friendly. I had planned on using one for my team in this playthrough simply to switch things up, but after realizing the hassle I'd have to go through, I quickly changed my mind. You see, you can't just set your Switch's date and time to Friday. It doesn't work. The game requires 24 hours to pass, leading to a Friday for this ghostly balloon to spawn. At best, you can change your Switch to Thursday, wait 24 hours, and then come back to catch this Pokemon, which is bonkers. I don't know what Diamond and Pearl's obsession with locking away Pokemon was all about, but it pops up again here. Heading towards Eterna Forest leads us to Route 205. It's a straight shot, which might sound a little boring, but it's designed pretty well. There's a lot of steps up and cliffs down, meaning you'll bob and weave your way as you venture through it. It's also dotted with trainer battles, which is cool, although I hate how the game zooms into a trainer as they prepare to battle you before zooming out to play the battle start animation. It just looks really jumpy, and I don't like it. What? What's that? You thought everything was going to be a deep analysis or meaningful commentary? Look, mister, what do you think this is? A successful YouTube channel? Ha! I will say, though, that the battle backgrounds are some of the most detailed the series has seen, and I really do like them. Depending on your location, they'll change, but there's plenty in the background and foreground to promote a sense of atmosphere. I mention it now because these mountainous ones that blend grassland and mountains together are some of the best in a game full of bangers. By far though, the worst background must go to the Team Galactic inspired version. These just look bad. They should have just kept whatever environment we were in instead of transporting us to the Shadow Realm. Can anyone here tell me what's up with all these trainers who need an escort in Diamond and Pearl? There's 5 traveling companions throughout the game, although only one is mandatory, that being this one in Eterna Forest. Cheryl, Mira, Buck, Marley, and Riley all offer to accompany you through certain sections of the map. Going with them makes all battles into 2 versus 2 encounters, including wild battles. Once you reach the end of the predetermined area, they thank you and promptly leave, never to be seen again for the most part. After introducing double battles in the previous generation, it seems Game Freak wanted to take them further, and these traveling companions were the best idea they could come up with. I'm not sure what the point of emphasis is supposed to be though. These characters don't have enough time with you to form a meaningful bond, and they aren't tied to story events or side quests, so what's the point? Again, BDSP had a chance to flesh these out more by reimagining them. Perhaps make each of them optional, but if you choose to go with the companion, it kickstarts a side quest where you must defeat a tough NPC exclusive to that quest. Or maybe you have to catch a certain Pokemon. I don't know, I'm just spitballing ideas here. As it is now, this system hardly seems worth a damn. Nothing is gained by our time with Cheryl here in Eterna Forest, whether it be an item reward or an interesting story to look back on later. Well, anyway, we made it to the end of the forest, so it's time for Cheryl to go off into the Shadow Realm, never to be seen again. Okay, yeah, they do show up in the Battle Tower later, but I'm trying to make a dramatic point here, for crying out loud. On a separate note, Eterna Forest has got to be one of the most half-baked forests in all the Pokemon universe. It's not a maze like Viridian Forest, it's not beautiful like Glimwood Tangle, and it's not even the best forest that contains companions. That title's reserved for Santaloon Forest in Kalos. I genuinely think Sinnoh is one of the better designed regions, but this forest doesn't factor into that at all. You literally just go up and to the right, and then you're out. It's kind of pathetic. Just like Cheryl. See? It all comes full circle, folks. There's a bit more to Route 205 after exiting the forest, but all it really contains is the traditional trainer battle against the guy with 6 Magikarps. And who wants to see that? So on to Eterna City. Eterna is quite the opposite of Jubilife. The bustling city streets and tech gurus are replaced with a quiet city who takes pride in its heritage and Sinnoh's past. In particular, the iconic statue in the eastern part of town looks spectacular. ILCA did a great job of reimagining this piece of Sinnoh's history. It's much more detailed now, which really allows you to see the blending of Palkia and Dialga into one being. It signals how our understanding of the past can be warped with time, as two entities have become one in the minds of the people. It highlights the region's commitment to tradition while blurring the line between our beliefs and factual history, and I really like it. It's here where we meet another trainer named Cynthia who gives us the HM for cut and encourages us to keep on working hard. She's pretty humble in this scene as she elects to introduce herself simply as another trainer instead of the champion of the Sinnoh region. This interaction helped remind me why I had such fond memories of Sinnoh. It has the best starters, my favorite Pokemon, and of course, the best champion. Pressing on though, we have a date with Gardenia, the gym leader of Eterna City. To get a match with her, we must defeat all the trainers in her gym. It's not much of a puzzle, but the area is full of narrow walkways. This restriction of space is quite notable at various points throughout Sinnoh, and it accentuates a problem that wasn't solved in the transition from DS to Switch. In the older games, you could only move in 4 directions: up, left, right, and down. So these sections that limited your space to move in were fine, given you could only move in those 4 directions. Now though, you're free to move in 8 different directions, and it leads to a lot of collisions. I mean, just look at this footage as I move through the gym. I'm constantly getting caught up on environmental objects, and it makes the visuals all jarring and jumpy. This problem might be inherent given the game's dedication to being a true remake, but it's still a problem nonetheless. Gardenia herself is a pretty forgettable gym leader, as she doesn't have a whole lot of personality. I always feel like grass-type gym leaders draw the short straw and never end up being memorable. She does at least use a Roserade, which is a pretty powerful Pokemon for these early stages of the game. Using Bruh the Jirachi made for one of the most interesting battles in this playthrough, as I couldn't just spam super effective moves to win. Beating her gives us our second badge, and while we're here, I just gotta say, they did a great job on these badge presentation scenes. I love them, they look great. After this, we must clear out Team Galactic's Eterna City base, which takes only a few moments. At the top, we find Jupiter, who tells us Team Galactic was searching for information on legendary Pokemon so that her boss can take over the space-time continuum. And we just kinda let that threat roll right off our shoulder. After defeating her skunk tank, we rescue the cycle shop owner, who later provides us with a bike. For some odd reason though, the game locks you out of Route 205 after you pick up the bike. This NPC will not let you past, and I spent way more time thinking about this than I should have. I still can't come up for a reason for why he won't let you backtrack. In my Brilliant Diamond playthrough, it felt even worse, because right before I got to the town, I had slathered up a honey tree, and now I had no way to get back to it until I progressed further. It's a dumb restriction. Like, can you imagine being at a state park, and some random hiker's like, sorry, you can't go down this trail. He's not official, he doesn't work there, he just won't let you pass. You'd be pissed! And Pokemon has always struggled with stopping player progression until certain checkpoints have been met. They originally stopped us with the advent of HMs, which checked your progress for gym badges, but as the series has shifted away from them, they rely more and more on random trainers to just stop you. It really shatters the world building, and I hope they can find a better solution to it soon. By the way, do you like how I spent more time rambling about this one kid than I did on the entirety of the Team Galactic encounter? God, this video is going swimmingly, isn't it? Before we can leave Eterna City, we have one last pit stop to make. It's here where we gain access to the Grand Underground, a large system of tunnels underneath Sinnoh that grant the player more exploration, more Pokemon encounters, more items, and the opportunity to create a secret base. This portion of the game is where ILCA spent the most time innovating, as is evident by how heavily the Grand Underground was pushed in the marketing. And while it's nothing revolutionary or magnificent, I have to give credit where credit is due, because the Grand Underground provides a lot of additional content for fans who want to expand their Pokédex and grind out rewards. By talking to this gentleman next to the Pokemon Center, we get the Explorer's Kit, which takes us down below the surface. Down here, we are free to move through the twisting tunnels as we see fit. However, the explorable area is limited by the location in which you enter the underground. This encourages players to take more trips down throughout the journey to see what kind of new locations they can discover. Within the shafts, you'll find NPCs. Some will heal your team, some will trade with you, and others will just be stopping you to say hello. If you're playing online, you'll also run into other players as you explore, which is a cool touch. It really makes this feel like a shared space and not some empty set of caverns. You will also encounter Digletts who leave behind, something. It shines, so it's probably not poop. Wait, how did Digletts use the bathroom? Okay, we're getting sidetracked here. These shiny poops fill up a meter, and when it's full, the player is more likely to encounter better items and shiny Pokemon. It takes a while to fill up and resets if you leave, so it encourages players to spend hours at a time down here to maximize on the benefits. On the walls of the tunnels, you'll find shiny spots where you can mine for treasure. This minigame is borderline addictive, and I really like it. It utilizes a variable ratio schedule in its reward process, meaning that you don't know when you'll get an item or what exactly it will be. You just know it's coming. These sorts of systems tap into our primal fondness of being surprised. We love knowing a reward is coming, but not knowing when it's going to hit big. The mining minigame keeps us playing with small rewards, such as gems and statue boxes, as we consistently work on chasing the big reward, like fossils or rare statue boxes. It also doesn't take long to complete, meaning it's easy to fall into that groove of wanting to mine just one more wall. Next thing you know, one more wall has turned into 50. It's really well designed. Once you gather up some goodies, you can put them to use. Fossils can be revived in the overworld to grant you new Pokemon, shining gems can be traded for useful items, and statues can be placed all around your secret base to increase the odds of certain types of Pokemon to spawn. I made my secret base and plopped down a Salamence statue, hoping to find an interesting new team member down here. These versions of secret bases are technically a point of customization, but ultimately they are just a stepping stone towards finding distinct types of Pokemon. Depending on the typing of the statue you plunk down, the more likely that type is to spawn in the nearby caverns. The more you have of a single type, the more your chances of that type spawning increase. Bigger statues have a bigger effect and will overpower smaller statues, meaning it's kind of pointless to have more than one typing in your base at once. I also put down a Crobat statue and was surprised to see that flying didn't become the dominant typing, even though I had two statues that shared it as a secondary type. I don't know, that was just strange to me. Regardless, there's going to be a lot of grinding to get the best statues in the game, and that's really not for me, not in this video. But I know it does appeal to some players who see these games as long-term investments. But let's get back to why we're down here in the first place. It's going to be a long journey to Veilstone City from here, so I figured having a fourth team member would be beneficial for additional type coverage, and also so that Pokemon can reap the EXP rewards we're about to come across. In the underground caverns, you can find Pokemon. Many of them are available in the overworld, but a handful of them can only be found down here. It's a nice way of expanding the player's options for team building, and that's always appreciated. In my hour or so down here, I stumbled across Houndoom, Lickitung, and Rhyhorn. I debated on using Rhyhorn, but you can't get the item for Rhyperior until after the main game, so no. Instead, I found this Pokemon, Pinsir. I've never used one before, and figured, why not? Of course, the only thing I had available to me at this point was Pokeballs, the standard version, and so it took me nearly 20 minutes to catch this damn thing. I've talked at length before about how annoying it can be to attempt catching Pokemon who simply don't want to be caught. You can check out my breakdown on the Crown Tundra DLC for that. But for now, we have Pinsir. And since I didn't know what exactly I'd find down here to use, I didn't pre-plan a nickname. So, I'm calling it Claude. I don't know why, but this just came to mind. So yeah, welcome to the team, Claude. Well, we're done in the Grand Underground, and we've been in Eterna City for an eternity. Okay, bad jokes aside, let's move on and continue our journey. Route 206 is one of my personal favorites, and that's because of how it acts as two pathways in one. Much like the cycling road in Hoenn, this Sinnoh counterpart dominates the visuals of the landscape, but below, a few patches of grass and foliage stand out. It lures you down into it once you've cleared out the trainers above. The cycling road is also kept straight, which means it can be used to cover environmental details below it. Inquisitive players will notice a cave in the back right-hand corner of the route, but it takes a true investigative heart to realize there's another entrance directly west of it. It's hidden by the cycling road, which makes discovering it feel kinda cool, as if it's a place you're not supposed to be. It's kind of ruined though because you need strength to progress further into it, and we won't be getting that for a while. It's a double bummer because that's where you can find Gibelet. This tiny dragon makes a formidable addition to your team, but it's locked away for now. I'll be completing the Wayward Cave off screen for the experience, but I did want to comment briefly on how requiring Flash to complete it is stupid. This concept should have been abandoned after Generation 1, as it only frustrates the requirement for HMs. BDSP really should have had made Flash usable from the HM screen on the Pokétch instead of requiring you to have a Pokemon that knows it. I get that it isn't technically an HM, but it's close enough, right? Lump it in for good measure. As we reach Route 207 and take on some of its trainers, you might have noticed how my team is really starting to pull away from the competition. I'm out-leveling them by a significant amount, which is leading to opponents being bodied in battles against me. This middle portion of the game, from the end of Eterna City until we venture towards Canalave City, is marred by this imbalance. There's two main culprits for this: the openness of this portion of the game, and the new approach to the EXP share. The first reason is carried over from Diamond and Pearl, but it becomes a real issue here due to that second reason. You see, after we reach Hearthome City in just a bit, the player is free to move towards Veilstone City or Pastoria City. Technically, the third badge awaits you in Veilstone, but nothing is stopping you from tackling Pastoria first, which I think is great. In fact, I'm going to do just that in this playthrough and talk about that a little bit later on. But for now, let's talk about the result of this. Because the player is free to go in either direction, Game Freak felt the need to cap the levels of the trainers in this expansive part of the game. This ensures that no matter which direction they go, the experience will be balanced. That's the theory on paper at least. In practice, it results in your Pokemon slowly out-leveling the competition and becoming over-leveled as you approach Pastoria City. This was the case in Diamond and Pearl. Here in BDSP, this issue has been taken to another level because of how the EXP share functions. They've opted to use the same experience system that was used in Sword and Shield, meaning you can't turn it on or off, and every Pokemon will gain EXP regardless of if they battled or not. You'll also get EXP for catching Pokemon. Unlike Sword and Shield though, this is a remake, and ILCA didn't elect to pump up the levels of other trainers' Pokemon to accommodate for the extra experience you receive. It leads to an exacerbation of the issue that previously existed. It's very easy to be 5, 10, or even 15 levels over every trainer, which means you can pretty much OHKO them even without super effective moves. It leads to this zombie-minded state of play where you're just spamming attacks to get the battle over with as quickly as possible, which is boring. This leads BDSP into having only a handful of challenging and rewarding battles, which is a shame. The developer should have increased the trainer's Pokemon levels, or they should have made the EXP share optional. What we get now is the worst of both worlds, and it severely worsens about a third of the main game. As we make our way east, we pass through Mount Coronet for the first time, but I want to talk more about that later. We meet Cyrus for the first time too, who's stone-faced and emotionless by design. He goes on and on about how he's curious over what corrupted time and space. It's stupid. Who the hell would go up to someone and start a conversation like that? You'd be thrown in jail for even trying such a strange thing. Please, somebody call Officer Jenny, we need assistance. After a lot of training, piggybacking finally evolved on Route 208 into Roselia. Evolving from a high happiness stat is probably one of the most interesting and realistic alternative evolution methods. The leveling evolution method makes sense as the standard since it's easy to track and gives the player an idea of when they're going to be getting final forms. However, it's all very numbers based. The happiness evolution method is too, but those numbers are kept hidden from you, and instead, you're more inclined to follow guiding principles that seem practical. These include not letting your Pokemon faint, having it battle more often, and keeping it as the number one Pokemon in your party. All of that makes sense. When the Pokemon finally does evolve, it feels like an accomplishment, like your Pokemon finally trusts you and has enough experience fighting alongside of you to grow into a stronger form. It better promotes the team-based growth the games have always pushed thematically, while also delivering a surprise since you're not exactly sure when it's going to happen. That brings us to Hearthome City, but I'll do a more thorough investigation of it when we return. For now, we're introduced to Super Contest shows and have a battle with the Flash. He's got a level 19 Starly. What are you doing, bro? Starly evolves at level 14. Level 19? What are you doing? Route 209 is home to some windy waterbeds, a handful of trainers, and the Lost Tower. It's here where trainers can bury their deceased Pokemon, which makes it weird that people battle here. Seems like we're defiling these graves, but so be it. Stomp the yard, you know? You can find plenty of Ghastly here, but this route's most iconic Spectre is Spiritomb, a really cool Sinnoh Pokemon who's both a Ghost and Dark type. Its design is pretty unique throughout the many Pokemon that exist, and it's actually used by the champion of this region. I considered using one in this playthrough, but then I remembered how convoluted the process of encountering it is. To get a Spiritomb encounter, you first must obtain the odd keystone on Route 208 and place it in this rock well. From there, you must interact with 32 people in the Grand Underground and then return to this well. From there, a level 25 Spirit Tomb will spawn and the battle begins when you interact with the stone. All in all, it's not a lot of steps, but that second step of interacting with so many people is a nuisance. It can be done in a day relatively simply if you stay under the surface for a while. It's time consuming though, and it doesn't feel worth it just for a new team member. Spirit Tome is yet another Pokemon in Diamond and Pearl that was somewhat soft-locked behind an arduous process. I've alluded to this when I talked about how many of the new Pokemon piggyback off of older Pokemon, but there's still so much more to say. You see, despite introducing new evolutions for older Mons, many of those Pokemon aren't a part of Sinnoh's regional Pokédex. Instead, many of the spots in Sinnoh's roster belong to older Pokemon. Yet, still, many of those Pokemon, along with some newer ones, are made so annoying to gather that many players won't be bothered to do so in a casual run. It's why the meme of Infernape, Garchomp, Staraptor, Luxray, Floatzel, and Lucario being everyone's Sinnoh team exists. These were practically the best Pokemon that you could get easily, and so many folks opted to use them. I can catch a Starly on nearly any route, so why should I waste my time going after something like Spiritomb with such a tedious capture method? I'm not sure why Game Freak opted to do this all those years ago, but it won't be the last time I mention it in this video because Spiritomb is far from the only example. But for now, let's move on to Solocian Town. This quaint and unassuming town is home to two notable places, the Pokemon Nursery and the Solocian Ruins. I won't be leaving any Pokemon behind at the daycare, but I love how there's NPCs in the game who exist solely to say that they aren't sure where Pokemon eggs come from. No one's ever seen one be laid, so they can't confirm that Pokemon actually lay them. I love how Game Freak is feigning innocence on this topic. They need this system to exist so that we can create Pokemon en masse for competitive battling, but they don't want to outright say that, yes, Pokemon do indeed get a wee bit naughty sometimes. It gives me a chuckle. The Solocian Ruins have always confused me. I remembered playing the original Diamond version and being convinced that this is where Giratina was being kept. I later discovered this wasn't the case, and that these ruins were pretty much just a mysterious location full of unknowns. There's a handful of interesting items to nab, but that's about it. I like it, I just wished its mysterious vibe had more of a payoff. Route 210 is underwhelming. It has a few different pathways, but you can shoot straight through it rather quickly if you're so inclined. Speeding through the game like that isn't ideal though, but speaking of fast, one of the most important corrections ILCA did make to these games involves its pacing. I don't mean the story pacing, no, I simply mean how the flow of battles has been sped up along with the accompanying text to ensure things didn't feel like such a grind. A quick YouTube search reveals a fascinating video comparing the speed of Diamond and Pearl versus the remakes in regards to how long it takes to kill a level 99 Blissey. In the original games, one-shotting this powerful puffball took over 20 seconds as the health bar drained incredibly slow. Here in the remakes, it takes less than 1 second. It's a dramatic example, but it signals how poor the pacing was in the original games. Text moved incredibly slow, and you couldn't skip through it as efficiently as you can now. This might just be due to the better hardware, but my god, the difference is night and day. And thank goodness too, as having all those wait times in my footage would have filled up my external hard drive in no time flat. I'm grateful to see this issue corrected here in BDSP, and I want to give ILCA a little bit of credit for that. Rainy Route 215 has a bunch more trainers, particularly a bunch that specialize in fighting type Pokemon. It gives Jirachi a chance to shine, as its psychic move, Confusion, tears through a lot of them. It also happens to learn Zen Headbutt during my time on this route, giving it another decent psychic attack. I easily sweep through every competitor here, as only this Ace Trainer's Kadabra can do more than a scratch on my team. That's because I'm utilizing super effective moves as often as possible. I've already touched on this in the Sword and Shield video, but it's truly a problem that has engulfed every Pokemon game since the franchise's inception. The type system is both a blessing and a curse, as it creates advantages and disadvantages with a lot of variety to boot. The problem is that once you understand the matchup chart, which won't take long, you're able to exploit it with ease. Bruh's psychic moves eviscerate all the fighting type Pokemon on this route, and that's before you even factor in the additional stab damage. Stab is an acronym that stands for Same Type Attack Bonus. Pokemon who use a move whose typing is shared with its typing do an additional 50% damage than they would if used by a Pokemon of a different type. And that's a lot of extra damage. It was more reasonable in older Pokemon games simply due to trainers being at your same level or a bit higher, but since the reimagining of the EXP share, things have changed drastically. It results in you having teams that are over-leveled compared to the competition, along with the player's knowledge of how to game the system. Without a difficulty option for NPCs, the AI doesn't stand a chance against you. It's once again felt here in BDSP, and I'd be remiss if I didn't mention it as an ongoing problem for the franchise. It almost makes you feel like you're rushing through the game, because every battle is no longer some strategic encounter that requires critical thinking. Instead, they feel like road bumps on your way to becoming the champion of the region, and when that moment comes, it doesn't feel quite as special. I mean, sure, you did it, you're the champ, but did you face any adversity along the way? Not really, and BDSP is yet another game to mitigate or address this issue. Despite the next gym being available here in Veilstone City, I've opted to skip the town completely and head directly for Pastoria City. It's here where I'd like to pick back up on that discussion earlier on the limitations of Sinnoh's Pokédex. In Route 214, you'll find the Maniac Ruins, which can only be fully accessed by catching every single variant of the unknown back in the Solosian Ruins. Before beating the champion, this tunnel system is the only way to catch Hippopotas, and there's only a 5% chance to encounter him. Now, if you do find all the unknown, the rate is bumped up to a meager 10% chance. As annoying as that sounds, at least it's not impossible or locked behind extreme tedium. I mean, some tedium, but not as much as it could be. This inspired me to look at the new Pokemon introduced in Diamond and Pearl and see just how many of them are easily accessible before the Elite Four. I wanted to understand what a player's options were if they wanted to use only Pokemon introduced in this generation on their team. And the results were shocking. I'm going to go into great detail here, so buckle up. As previously stated, 107 new Pokemon were introduced in Generation 4. However, these 107 are distributed into different Pokemon lineages. For example, Pichu, Pikachu, and Raichu make up a single Pokemon line. Most people will only use the final evolution from a single Pokemon line. For example, you wouldn't use a Staravia and a Staraptor on the same team. Using this logic, we can eliminate many of the baby Pokemon, first evolutions, and middle evolutions, and focus solely on final form Pokemon. This trims things down to 68 Pokemon. Hopefully you're still with me here, because things are going to get more wild. Of those 68 Pokemon, 15 of them are legendary or mythical Pokemon, which most trainers will choose not to use on their team. Except for me, obviously. This leaves us with 53 selections. But wait, 2 of them are the final evolutions to starters you can't choose. I chose Chimchar, which locks me off from having Empoleon and Torterra, bringing it down to 51. However, it gets even worse. 18 of those belong to new evolutions to older Pokemon, such as Gliscor, Mamoswine, Magmortar, and Porygon Z. This leaves you with a mere 33 Pokemon to consider for a final team of all new Pokemon. And spoiler alert, that isn't many. It's a pretty pathetic number, all things considered. I'm now going to read off the names of these remaining Pokemon. This includes all 3 starters, bringing the total to 35, even though you can only choose 1 starter. So, if you want to build a team of just Sinnoh Pokemon, this is what's available to you. Empoleon, Infernape, Torterra, Staraptor, Bibarel, Kricketune, Luxray, Roserade, Rampardos, Bastodon, Wormadam, Malthim, Vespiquen, Pachirisu, Floatzel, Cherim, Gastrodon, Ambipom, Drifblim, Lopunny, Mismagius, Honchkrow, Perugly, Skunktank, Bronzong, Chatot, Spiritomb, Garchomp, Lucario, Hippowdon, Drapion, Toxicroak, Carnivine, Lumineon, and Abomasnow. That's it. Of these 35, 33, once you pick a starter, there's some stinkers. Rampardos and Bastodon are only accessible after grinding out fossils in the underground. Vespiquen requires finding a female Combee, which is only 12.5% on top of the percentage chance of actually finding one on a honey tree. Similar requirements apply to Cherim, Malthim, Ambipom, and Wormadam. Mismagius, Honchkrow, Perugly, and Skunktank are version exclusives. Lumineon, Carnivine, Kricketune, and a few others are straight up bad. So what's left? Well, it turns out you got Infernape, Staraptor, Luxray, Floatzel, Garchomp, and Lucario. Funny how that worked out. I'm kidding, but hopefully my point is evident by now. There just isn't enough selection available in BDSP. And yes, you can use older Pokemon, obviously, but it's just a shame that so many of the new Pokemon are either bad, hard to get, impossible to get until the post-game, or are locked behind arduous processes like farming honey trees. It was a disaster for the 4th generation of Pokemon, and the only solution here is giving us more older Pokemon in the Grand Underground to choose from. ILCA failed to fix this generation's most glaring issue, and it sucks. There's no other way to put it. Please, free the Generation 4 Pokemon. Whew, okay. That was a doozy of a section. Might as well cleanse our palate with some tasty battles at the Valor Lakefront. I don't have much to say about this area. I think it's kind of strange that you enter it from the backside of the resort and leave through the front desk. It makes me feel like a dad who's taken his kids on vacation, but he can't figure out where the hell to park to enter Disneyland at. Difficulty in Pokemon games has gained traction as a discussion point over the last decade, really since the release of X and Y. I've seen some players point to the game's battle mode settings and claim that changing from Switch to Set is a built-in difficulty modifier. Switch mode allows you to switch out Pokemon before your opponent sends in their next Mon. Set mode locks you into whatever Pokemon is already battling as your opponent's next Mon is summoned. On paper, this makes set mode harder since the opportunity to hard switch into advantageous typings is stripped away. This claim has its merits when you fight trainers with equal or higher level Pokemon and those with variety in their typings. Who meets those requirements in BDSP? Well, really only the champions, sadly. In Route 213, I briefly switched battle modes just to see this difference for myself, and to the surprise of no one, it didn't stop my dominance. Part of this is due to the overleveling I've already discussed, but another part of it is due to how Pokemon are selected for opposing trainers. In Sinnoh, a lot of trainers will use mono-type teams. We see this mostly in battles against collectors who have 3 of the same Pokemon. But there are others like fishermen who mostly use water Pokemon, or hikers who mostly use rock. On the beach here, I fight a boy with 3 Shellos, and since Bruh knows Shockwave, they all go down with ease. Usually the overleveling is enough to get by, so long as you have moves that do neutral damage at the very least. However, even on set mode, some teams can be swept completely simply because the trainers only have one type of Pokemon. This idea of set and switch being an in-game difficulty modifier doesn't really cut it for me, and I still think difficulty options should be implemented. We've finally arrived in Pastoria City, but before we make a play for our next gym badge, it's time to add another team member. Pastoria feels kind of cobbled together in its design, but it does make sense given it arose as a community around the Great Marsh. Mother Nature hasn't been overridden to make room for progress, as is evidenced by the amount of trees and berries that cut through the town. You won't find any plowed walkways or concrete roads here, just a few patches of kept grass, which provides an insight on how the people here choose to live. The people of this town live in harmony with nature and look to preserve the Great Marsh. It's rather unassuming at first glance, but it's evidence of another well-designed city. Speaking of the Great Marsh, it's this generation's take on the Safari Zone. In the entrance building, you can peer through binoculars to get an idea where certain Pokemon are located on that particular day. These rotate every 24 hours, which is kind of a slog if you're looking for a specific team member. Overall, you'll be able to locate most things easily, but Carnivine is always a pain in the ass to locate. And that's a shame, as it's a fan favorite from the anime, and one of the cooler designs in my opinion. It's just another example of a Pokemon being locked away behind tedium. Once you enter the marsh, you're free to trounce around its many areas in search of new Pokemon. Naturally, you'll find a lot of water-type Pokemon here, but there are some other critters to gather. I always found these alternate battle options strange though. You don't battle in the traditional sense. Instead, you just lob Safari Balls at Pokemon, and they have a 1.5 times catch rate multiplier. You can bait the Pokemon, as well as throw mud at it, which I just love the idea of that. But these have effects on the Pokemon's chances of running and its capture rate, but they hardly seem worthy of note. The best option remains just throwing Pokeballs. While we're here though, I decided to grab my 5th team member, Meryl. I've always found this little puffball cute, but never gave him a chance on a team. I figured Azumarill would be a decent water type, and a secondary fairy typing might come in handy. In fact, I'm nicknaming it Garchomp Who. I'm counting on this Pokemon to hit rather hard against Cynthia's Garchomp, who proved to be one of the only challenging trainers I faced during my Brilliant Diamond playthrough. So, Meryl, welcome to the team. With our time in the Great Marsh coming to an end, I hopped over to Pastoria City's gym to take on Crasher Wake. Usually, Wake is meant to be the 4th gym leader, but you're able to skip the battle with Maylene if you so choose. This was the last time the Pokemon games would allow you to do this, and that's a small bummer if you ask me. Since Generation 5, Pokemon has pushed its storytelling element more. I'm not saying they've done it well, but an attempt has been made. This requires more linearity in terms of how you move about the worlds, which has restricted potential for gym skipping. In this transition, a small sense of freedom has been lost. Pokemon worlds now feel much more like one of those long lines at Universal, only one way to go with no sense of expression. It's not the end of the world, and it's by no means the franchise's biggest issue, but providing small choices like this helps make the player feel more in control of their journey. It also helps make the world feel a little bit less restrictive when you don't have people stopping you from going down a route because the power is out, or some Psyducks are in the way. It's unlikely we see this design choice return, but it does have its merits. With that, we defeat Crasher Wake and grab that third gym badge, sorry. Oh, by the way, Meryl evolved in this gym already. It didn't take long. Sweet. It's a pretty quick turnaround back to Veilstone City, but I honestly don't have much to say about it. I really like the layout of the town, and there's some interesting landmarks here, such as the grandiose department store and the looming and ominous Team Galactic HQ. I took some time to buy TMs at the department store so that Azumarill could fulfill the potential of his nickname by learning Ice Beam. The gym battle here is probably the most forgettable in the game, although Candace's is pretty close to it. I was able to sweep through Maylene's team with ease. Lucario is such an iconic Pokemon within this generation. Well, really within the whole franchise. I always forget it's first shown next to a relatively weak gym leader who fully admits she's not sure how she got into the position she's in. It's just not that great in my opinion. My reward for winning was Monferno evolving into his final form. Infernape is such a cool design. They really nailed it. Before we skip town, we helped Dawn recover her Pokédex from some Team Galactic grunts. We've bumped into them a handful of times now, but we still don't have any real idea of what they're planning or what they stand for. All we get are these whispers about their boss creating a new world. This remains true back in Pastoria, as we track down a goon who's delivering a bomb to a nearby lakefront. The Flash speeds up on us for a quick battle, and he still has Starly! It's level 26! What is going on? Anyway, we destroy him, and it's back to following the Galactic Grunts. It's kinda strange that we just let the guy go, but at least Cynthia's here. She's cool. She gives us some medicine to clear out the Psyduck back on Route 210, so I guess that's where we're headed next. I have a confession to make. Well, two confessions. Route 210 isn't as short as I led you to believe. Once we clear the Psyduck of their headaches and agree to take an old charm to Cynthia's grandma, the route expands further. It's full of ace trainers too, which is cool. It only seems natural for them to train in a dangerous place full of cliffs and ledges, kinda like a scene out of a training montage or something like that. So seeing them here makes sense. Anyway, my second confession is that I actually caught two Meryls back in the Great Marsh. I knew this Pokemon would be vital to the playthrough since Cynthia's Garchomp is the hardest competitor in the main story. The first Meryl I caught had a jolly nature, meaning it got a boost to speed, but a nerf to its special attack stat. Since Ice Beam will be our primary win condition, I didn't want such a penalty to our special attack stat. So, I caught another that had a brave nature, meaning attack was boosted, but speed was lowered. It should be fine. Famous last words. Pokemon natures were introduced in Generation 3, and while they don't have a massive impact on the difficulty of the main story, at least not anymore, they still remain incredibly important in the PvP scene. Dedicated guides to breeding can be found all over YouTube, and for good reason. There's a lot of complexity behind building the perfect competitive Pokemon, and its nature is just one component of that. There's 25 different natures in Pokemon, and they all provide a way to manipulate Pokemon's stats while also giving them a very small touch of personality. Some are neutral, meaning no stat changes occur, such as serious or quirky. The most relevant natures, though, will affect a Pokemon's stats by buffing one category and nerfing another, both by 10%. For years, Pokemon fans have asked for Game Freak to be more transparent with how these systems function by providing in-game explanations. The Pokemon developer responded best to this in the 6th generation of games, but haven't maintained that momentum in games since. That's really all I wanted to talk about though. I only bring this up because I wish the game took more time to reflect a Pokemon's nature with the visuals, rather than just the mechanically inclined stat changes. I would love to see Pokemon who stand differently, pose, attack with more ferocity, and other things like this just to deliver more personality and individual identity to each team member. I know this is a pipe dream considering Pokemon seems unwilling to do a massive overhaul of the game's animations, but make no mistake that it could be done. Pokemon is the highest grossing entertainment IP in the world, so make it happen please. Oh, also on this route, Jirachi attempted to learn gravity. And while I'm a big fan of John Mayer, I just don't want to see my Pokemon get embarrassed on American Idol, so I'll pass. Many of Sinnoh's towns and cities reflect the region's dedication to tradition, but none more so than Celestic Town. This quiet, unassuming town is full of elders who speak of days gone by, and any sense of technological progress seems to have come to a halt long ago. Hell, they don't even have a Pokemart like you'd expect. The placement of this town on the map couldn't have been better, as Route 210 is to the east and Mount Coronet is to the west. The mountain provides a natural barrier that can keep advancements out, while the same can be said about the rough terrains and cliffsides to the east. These natural barriers have gone a long way in keeping progress out, making this town's dedication to the old ways of life all the more enduring. It was truly a great idea to plop this town in this pocket of Sinnoh. It just makes sense. However, I wish the game's writing did as good a job as the geographical world design. Better writing would have really made our time in the Cave of Origin much more impactful than it ends up being. They set things up perfectly with the level design, but then failed to deliver a knockout blow with the writing, leaving Celestic Town feeling pretty forgettable. Kinda ironic, given that these people refuse to forget the past. It's kind of a cruel fate. Route 212 is one of the longest in the game, as it contains both the famous Pokemon Mansion, as well as a swampy area full of mud pits and easy trainer battles. There's also some police officers who only battle you if it's nighttime, which I always thought was a neat inclusion. I wanted to talk about two things in this route. First of all, the Pokemon Mansion. This gaudy villa is the home of Mr. Backlot, and while its inside is relatively empty, its backyard is home to a trophy garden where rare Pokemon will spawn. Before becoming champion though, only 5 Pokemon spawn: Staravia, Kricketune, Pichu, Pikachu, and Roselia, which is extremely disappointing. This would have been an excellent location to include some of Sinnoh's harder to find Pokemon, or early forms of those Pokemon who got new evolutions, such as Rhydon, Aipom, Duskull, and Nosepass. But no, we don't get any new inclusions here until you beat the base game, which is a shame to me. I remember playing through this area as a youth and thinking it felt unfinished, as if there was something I was missing here, but not really. It's just a big empty house with a couple of Pokemon in the back. Route 212, like many others, is the home of some of Sinnoh's honey trees. Out of all the ways to encounter Pokemon in this game, this must be the worst. Its process sounds simple enough. Spread some honey on a tree, wait a set amount of time, and return to find a Pokemon encounter waiting for you. There's 3 major issues with these honey trees. The first is simply the absurd amount of time you're expected to wait for an encounter. It takes 6 hours for a Pokemon to be attracted to the tree, and after those 6 hours, you have 24 hours to start the battle, or the Pokemon will leave and your honey will have been wasted. And when Game Freak decided on 6 hours, They meant it. Once again, the internal clock of the Nintendo Switch has no bearing on those 6 hours, meaning you can't simply skip ahead to farm encounters, which is super annoying. It feels like something out of a bad mobile game, not a blockbuster franchise like Pokemon. Of course, that's only the first true pain of honey trees. The second comes when you realize that many Pokemon can spawn on these trees and you aren't guaranteed a particular encounter. On top of that, there's 2 different types of honey trees, each with their own pool of available Pokemon. From what I understand, any given honey tree has a 70% chance of pulling from Group A and a 30% chance of pulling from Group B. Sometimes these groups have identical Pokemon, but other times rarer Pokemon are locked behind Group B. For example, if I was searching for a Heracross from this honey tree, I'd need some major luck on the dice roll. Heracross can only be found in Group B at a 5% encounter rate. This means I first have to hit the 30% chance of getting Group B, but then also hit the 1 in 20 chance of it being Heracross. The odds of that happening are 1.5%. That's pretty bad. Now sure, there are many trees you can slather up with honey, but those odds are still grim. The third and final problem is that many of these honey tree encounters feature Pokemon that are locked to this mechanic. You can't find Aipom, Heracross, Cherubi, Combee, or Burmy anywhere else in the game, at least not that I know of. So if you want any of them for your team, you're going to have to endure a lot of grinding, which completely halts your progress through the game. And that sucks. I really wanted to use an Aipom for this playthrough, but I just can't be bothered. These honey trees are brutal, they're unforgiving, and they further limit the pool of available Pokemon in BDSP. There's a lot of content available for players in Hearthome City, the most unique of which would be the game's Super Contest shows, which are an attempt to build on the Pokemon contest from Generation 3. I won't sugarcoat this, I don't care about Pokemon contests. I made some Poffins and completed a single show just to get footage for this section, but boy could I not be any less interested. An attempt has been made to speed up contests, as I guess too many players found them to be too slow in Hoenn. Most contests here wrap up in 2 minutes or less. You summon your Pokemon, do a little dance, and perform a single move to raise your score for a chance to win. You are judged by the arrangement of your stickers on the ball capsules, your synchronicity with the dance music, and the timing of your move. You must also take time to increase the stat that corresponds with the contest you're competing in, such as cool or cute contests. You do this by feeding your Pokemon Poffins that you can make at the Poffin House or in Amity Square. Let this footage be an example of how bad I am at this. I made foul Puffins. They are burnt lumps of berries. Somehow my Pokemon happily eat them, but I really don't get why I screwed up. You have to play this mini game where you rotate the left stick in rhythm with the directions. I kept up the pace and went as fast as I could, yet I still burnt every batch. Perhaps it was the combination of berries I used? I don't know. Why would I know? I don't like these contests. My thumb hurts from this minigame. I'm done. We're moving on. Amity Square is really underutilized. I had high hopes when I entered it, but it's just the equivalent of a dog park. You can pull out a few select Pokemon and walk them around the park, picking up a few items along the way. Much like the Pokemon Mansion, this space feels underwhelming and unfinished. It does allow Pokemon to follow you though, so that's nice. However, much like in Sword and Shield, the 3D models and extended movement system cause issues with this feature. Sure, Pokemon will follow you, but some are so slow that they get left behind. They also frequently get stuck on environmental objects and then teleport to you, which doesn't look good. Well, unless you're walking in Abra. And worst of all, when you walk into them, you push them around as they fail to react to your movement in these instances. It looks terrible, and it immediately sucks away any immersion that this feature should have provided. Fantina is the gym leader at Hearthome City, and she's one of the game's better inclusions. In the limited time we spend with her, she demonstrates a lot of personality. She's not originally from Sinnoh, but has come here to compete in super contest shows and to lead the gym. With the power of hindsight, we can deduce that she's probably from Kalos, which is cool. Her stylish dress lines up with her motivation to win contests, and she battles hard. Just a really solid gym leader through and through. Route 218 takes us to Canalave City, but we'll have to use surf to get there. I've been dancing around this topic for the whole video because there's so many points of criticism to address. However, it needs to be said, they did a great job at implementing HMs across this game. Sinnoh was notorious for the spamming of HMs, both returning classics and new favorites. And yeah, I use those words sarcastically. The original games had 8 mandatory HMs, plus you needed Flash for the Wayward Cave. That's a 9-move requirement to explore Sinnoh to its fullest potential. A team of 6 will only have 24 total moves, and even forgetting about Flash, 33% of those must be HMs by the time you reach the Elite 4 in Diamond and Pearl. That's why so many people use B-Barrel as an HM slave, because it was capable of learning nearly every HM. So, in short, it restricted your Pokemon's move coverage for world navigation. It didn't feel good. Here in BDSP, a compromise had to be made. Keeping this system entirely how it was would have pissed off a lot of players, myself included. But luckily, they found a middle ground by maintaining the world design of Sinnoh while not requiring your team members to know HMs. They did this by making HM moves accessible in the Pokétch as its own app. This gives you the best of both worlds, and was a smart solution to a problem that plagued Diamond and Pearl. But the question then becomes, why didn't they do this for some of the other glaring issues affecting the 4th generation of Pokemon? Like, credit where credit is due, but either ILCA or Game Freak, whoever was in charge of these decisions, you should have taken it further and made these games better than the originals. Before we tackle the gym in Canalave City, I opted to venture out to Iron Island to escort Riley, but more importantly, to pick up a shiny stone to evolve Roselia into Roserade. Iron Island does suffer from that issue I mentioned a while back with the extended movement in cramped spaces, but overall, it's one of my favorite areas in the game. Riley makes for an awesome companion who's more than capable of holding his own in battle alongside Lucario. He's just so cool. Like, we never meet our dad in this Pokemon game, and a part of me hopes it's Riley. Maybe he just went out for a pack of Pika Smokes and never came back. I also enjoy partnering up with him because the trainers down here finally start to feature some fully evolved Pokemon. Pokemon like Floatzel and Medicham can be found on opponents' teams, and it's nice to see them after fighting so many weaker Pokemon on the last few routes. Yeah, I'm looking at you, guy with 4 Magikarps. It's disappointing then, though, that the Team Galactic grunts, at the end of the tunnel, do use weaker Pokemon, like Zubat, Krogunk, Glameow, and Stunky. It's anticlimactic for a dungeon that served up some decent battles. Our other reward for completing Iron Island is a shiny stone that we can use to evolve Roselia into Roserade. Yeah, didn't I just write that a moment ago? What do you want from me? I've played Pokemon Shining Pearl for 4 hours today. I'm losing my mind a tad. But evolutionary stones have been a staple of the franchise since all the way back in Generation 1. I'm glad to see the tradition continue, but I'm not sure I can get behind the idea of how many we've seen introduced. As of Generation 8, there's now 10 stones that can be used to evolve Pokemon. Fire, Water, Thunder, Leaf, Dusk, Sun, Shiny, Ice, Moon, and Dawn stones to be exact. Adding more is fine, but it just starts to feel like a bit much after a while. Not to mention that all of these stones then have to be brought into the next generation if Pokemon that use them are included. It's the same issue with items like the Magmarizer that evolves Magmar into Magmortar. The new generation ends up being littered with items like this, and at some point it has to give. And perhaps it already has, with Game Freak probably choosing to embrace Dexit for all future titles. Who knows? Only time will tell. I've cheated a little bit. Before we got to Iron Island, we had to battle against the Flash back in Canalave. I know I've been glossing over these fights, but there really isn't much substance to them. They exist solely to remind you that Barry is in the game and has similar goals to you. I'll talk more about his character later, but for now, let's whoop him again and move on. The layout of Canalave Gym doesn't do much for me. The gym is steel type, and so I see what they're going for with all the metallic structures, but it just feels kind of disjointed to me. I have a hard time putting my finger on exactly why that is. It just feels so video gamey, but not in a cool way. It feels like a space that couldn't exist. I wasn't a big fan of Hearthome's gym structure either, with the random math puzzles, and the next one isn't the best either. Replaying this game really made me miss the gym missions and trial challenges of Generations 7 and 8. As for the leader, Byron, he's up there with Maylene and Candace for being forgettable. Outside of being Rourke's father, there isn't much to him. Of course, you could argue that his fatherhood is a notable detail. A handful of the important NPCs have relatives scattered all across Sinnoh. We, of course, have Rourke and Byron, but I'm pretty sure the Underground Man is Byron's father, or maybe brother. There's also Cynthia and her grandmother, and us and our mother. It's just a few examples, but considering how important passing down tradition through the generations is to Sinnoh, it was smart to include at least a few family structures like this. As for his gym battle though, Byron is relatively simple and goes down without much of a fight. From here, it's off to the Canalave Library to learn more about the ancient legends of Sinnoh's past. This bit jumpstarts the story, and the next 2 hours or so will be about wrapping things up with the Team Galactic subplot. Professor Rowan tasks us with investigating the 3 lake spirits, but just as we're about to embark, an explosion's aftershocks are felt. Outside, we're told that a bomb was detonated at Lake Valor. Yeah, probably shouldn't have let that guy get away earlier. Shit, my bad, Sinnoh. But now we gotta go figure out what the heck is going on. We find a scene of devastation at Lake Valor, but it's hard to take seriously. You got a bunch of Magikarp flopping around, and apparently the only effect the bomb had was evaporating all the water. It's comically bad. Thought that back in 2007, and I still think it here today. These sections are here to set up Team Galactic's endgame, as they've captured the Lake Spirits to use their power to summon Palkia. It gives us a decent enough excuse to venture up to Snow Point City to check on the final lake and earn our 7th badge. Route 211 is a quick pit stop on our way up north. I battle a few trainers here, and I wanted to say, I'm surprised that the Pokemon models look so clean. In the reveal trailers, I remember fearing that the models didn't look quite right, as if they needed some cell shading to make them look more solid. They just looked kind of ethereal to me. Luckily, I don't feel that way anymore. They turned out better than I had anticipated. I'm not sure if it's because I haven't seen some of these Pokemon in a while, but it also feels like some of them got new animations. Perhaps that's just my subconscious mind comparing the original Pearl animations to these ones instead of from Sword and Shield. Still, I'm happy with it. During my time on this route, Infernape manages to expel the poison from his body because our connection as Pokemon and trainer is so strong. It seems a little off that a Pokemon would get rid of toxins in its body solely because it loves me, but whatever. Moments like this are the result of the affection system, which is tied directly into the friendship stat here in BDSP. When your affection is high enough, Pokemon will do shit like this: survive at 1 HP, get extra crits, or eliminate status ailments. Surviving with 1 health is sort of metal, but overall, these fail-safes just make the game easier than it already is. It seems to be pretty random too, meaning most of the time, when you need it to kick in, it doesn't. I miss how affection was handled in Generation 6, when it was tied to Pokemon-Ami. If you didn't interact with and feed your Pokemon, this stat would stay low and you wouldn't see the benefits. But if you put in the time, affection would increase and you'd be more likely to get these perks. In this way, affection was optional, meaning you didn't have to deal with it if you didn't want to, and it also made sense within the context of the story. But mostly, I just miss Pokemon-Ami. I wish it would come back. I love petting my Pokemon. Route 216 is where we get our first snowy path in the game, and it complements the notion that we're headed to the farthest north point in Sinnoh. The first trainer I encountered here was using a Lopunny, and in another universe somewhere, this Pokemon probably Mega Evolves during this battle. But not in this universe, despite how many fans were hoping for it. During the BDSP hype season, many fans speculated on whether Mega Evolution would make its triumphant return here, or if the studio would elect to bring over Dynamax mechanics from Sword and Shield. These trains of thought stemmed mostly from the Hoenn remakes. Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire not only brought over the new Megas from X and Y, but also introduced some new ones. Fans speculated if BDSP would do the same. On the other hand, many folks thought since the previous remakes copied that generation's substantial new mechanic, BDSP would do the same by bringing in Dynamax. But in the end, neither happened. So, which side of the argument was I on? Well, I kinda hoped for some new Mega Evolutions too. Dynamax as a mechanic seemed so integral to the culture of Galar, and bringing it over here would have felt kind of strange. Not to mention, all the gyms would have had to been replaced with stadiums to justify how Pokemon could grow so large and still maneuver about during a battle. Mega Evolutions circumvented this issue and would have provided a real excitement level to these games. Despite wanting Megas though, I had a gut feeling that it wouldn't happen. Pokemon is so hesitant on bringing back older mechanics, features, and systems into their new games. And that's true of the very best features, let alone a mechanic like Mega Evolution that was so polarizing to the competitive scene. Without it though, BDSP is really lacking. X and Y, Sun and Moon, and Sword and Shield each introduce their own respective battle mechanics, and I've gotten used to seeing something new each time. BDSP doesn't feel refreshing for its lack of an inclusion, it just feels out of date. There's something so brilliant about Route 217's design. It's one of the longest routes in the game, and that really conveys the sense of adventure and journey you're on. The pounding blizzard, maze-like tree line, and deep trenches of snow would be enough to keep many a trainer inside drinking hot cocoa with moo moo milk. But not us. We can feel the world pushing back against us. We don't dominate this part of Sinnoh without any feedback from Mother Nature like in so many other parts of the game. Yet, we still endure. Not only are we pushing forward for our next gym badge, but also to check in on our friend and make sure Team Galactic doesn't win. Our drive to carry on is personified by our dedication to pushing onward as we not only defeat the trainers in our way, but also the elements that stand against us. It's noble, and the level design helps convey that. I really admire it. With a final push, we reach Snow Point City. Snow Point City is rather inaccessible at the moment. Well, at least much of its alluring pieces are. We can't take the ferry yet, and we also can't get access to Snow Point Temple, meaning our fight with Candace at the gym is about all we're going to accomplish here at the moment. As I've mentioned before, I think Candace is a really underwhelming gym leader who doesn't stand out amongst the crowd. As you'd expect, she's an Ice-type user whose ace Pokemon is her Abomasnow, which goes down very quickly to Infernape's Flame Wheel. I've talked a lot about the smart choices made in the world and level design of Sinnoh to promote a feeling of cohesion, but I can't help but feel that a real missed opportunity occurred here. After trudging through the thick snow, it's only natural for us to think that Candace will use ice types, and lo and behold, she does. But how cool would it have been if the game subverted our expectations by making her a fire-type gym leader? No one would have seen that coming, and it would have been pretty sweet. You could even write her character to be very warm and inviting. Perhaps even her fire-type Pokemon were the ones who provided enough warmth initially for this little town to grow and become as populated as it is. She could even be like Rourke or Volkner in the sense that you have to find her out in the world before you get to battle her. For example, place her in one of the NPC's homes with an Infernape of her own who's using Ember to light up people's chimneys. I'm just kind of spitballing here, but the whole 7th gym leader being an Ice-type user is really starting to get stale. It's just happened so many times now. I hope the 9th generation of Pokemon switches things up by not starting us in a small town next to a grassy root or forest. I want to see something new. Start us in a desert with lots of ground-type Pokemon, or an icy wilderness with ice types. Even a small island separate from the main region would be awesome, as adding some early tropical Pokemon like Execucute or Bruxish would be such a drastic change. There's ways to improve the gym system and distribution of Pokemon types without some dramatic overhaul. Just build your world differently and try something new, for crying out loud. After beating Candace, we have to check in on the Flash at Lake Acuity. Kinda strange that we didn't do this first, but yeah. He's been beaten in battle, resulting in the Lake Spirit here being captured. He resolves to get stronger, and to emphasize the meaning in his words, he doesn't run away quickly like he has always done before. It's such a small touch, but he seems kind of different now because of that. But with that, we head back to Veilstone for the sake of Uxie, Azelf, and Mesprit. Team Galactic HQ is one of those standard Pokemon dungeons that incorporates warp pads. I'm not sure why Game Freak was so keen on utilizing teleportation. On one hand, it does provide a miniature puzzle for the player to consider, but here in Pearl, you can't even call it that. Most of the non-essential warp pads lead you to direct dead ends, forcing you to double back anyway. So they aren't really a puzzle, and they make zero sense from a world believability standpoint. Like, who on earth designs a building like this? Can you imagine having these in your home? One day you eat too much Taco Bell and you get sick and you desperately need a bathroom, only to forget which warp pad leads you to it. So you end up losing your lunch in the guest bedroom. Like, what the hell? How did this endure for so many generations? There's a handful of battles, items, and keys to find throughout this relatively small dungeon. The battles are a cakewalk as we've come to expect, making it pretty trivial to navigate. We finally encounter Cyrus at the top, and he gives us a speech about how emotion is stupid and sentimentality is meaningless. He claims to take power from Pokemon and use it to his own advantage. They really try to make him seem like he's making decisions on a universal scale, as if he's the precursor to Thanos. He has these thoughts that are supposedly beyond our understanding, but the writing in the game isn't good enough, so he just comes off as an emotionless, robotic idiot. Cyrus is really disappointing in this regard. You can write characters like this much better, but Game Freak didn't, leading to the most forgettable antagonist of all time in these games. You know, at least Lysander had cool hair. Weirdly enough, after beating Cyrus in battle, we have to rematch Commander Saturn to free Azelf, Uxie, and Mesprit. Which is strange, right? We defeated the head honcho of Team Galactic, he rewards us with the Master Ball of all things, and then we have to face his subordinate to complete our objective here. It's like getting your diploma only to have the professor hand you one last pop quiz. They should have just put Cyrus here and forgotten this meaningless battle with Saturn. The climax of this encounter has already occurred, making this easy battle even more of an afterthought. But now it's time to head to Mount Coronet. As we make our way up the mountain and defeat countless Team Galactic grunts and goons, I wanted to talk about Sinnoh as a region. You may have noticed throughout this video that I've taken a few moments to highlight elements of the world and level design that really help this region come to life geographically and culturally. I'm talking about things like the snowy depths of Route 217, the overgrown bits of Pastoria City, the mining operation next to Orobal City, and the winding caves and caverns that define this mountainous territory. It's details like this, big and small, that help make Sinnoh the most well-realized region in Pokemon, at least to me. Its only real competition is Alola, but even that region failed to strike the balance between varied world design and geographical realism. In other words, it included way too many biomes in such a small area. It made up for it culturally though, which helps drive it into competition with Sinnoh for best realized region. Sinnoh feels like it could be a real location because of all the things I've highlighted so far. However, its most impressive bit also happens to be its anchor, Mount Coronet. Since BDSP is played from a top-down perspective, this massive behemoth of a landmass doesn't quite have as big an impact as it does in Pokemon Legends Arceus. Still, it makes its presence felt as you pass through it a handful of times throughout the game, making your way from town to town, city to city. Each time you pass through, new possibilities are unlocked because of new HMs, allowing you to progress just a tad further into it. But it's not until you get Rock Climb that it truly opens up. While I'm not a big fan of HMs, I must admit that they put them to use here in Mount Coronet. It's like Game Freak said, hey, if we're gonna make players use 8 of these things, we might as well build levels with them in mind. Mount Coronet emphasizes this without bogging things down with annoying HM puzzles. Regardless, the mountain always pulls you back in, like a gravitational pull, and this time we must do the impossible. Ascend it. I love these upper portions of the mountain where you briefly duck out into a scene of snowfall and patches of grass covered in white. I've always had a deep love for tunnels and caves in-game. When they are done well, they can lure you in with an unbelievably mysterious vibe. I'd point to the Snake Cave in Sekiro and the Zero Dawn Cave in Horizon Zero Dawn as evidence. But Mount Coronet belongs on that list too. It's well put together, fun to explore, and provides a sense of identity to Sinnoh. Really well done. Spectacular work. Well, we've arrived at the end of the Team Galactic plotline. And, does it even feel like it? Despite numerous encounters with the clan throughout the game, their motivations have been left completely nebulous. All we've seen is threats of creating a new world without much expansion on this premise. I mean, come on, we're about to have our final showdown and we hardly know what the stakes are or what Cyrus is really planning to do. He's got a red chain, he hates feelings, and he wants to destroy the universe. Ooh, how scary. Team Galactic is just bad. From top to bottom, easily the worst and most underdeveloped evil organization in the history of Pokemon. Arriving at Spear Pillar, we come face to face with Cyrus and company for one final showdown with the Madman. Cyrus uses the red chain to rip a hole in the space-time continuum, and Palkia emerges soon after. We get this weird dimensional effect, and it looks really bad. Also, shouldn't Spider-Man be coming through this thing by now? Oh, what's that? That's the wrong franchise? Oh, my bad, but No Way Home was a great movie. Anyway, before we can face the head of Team Galactic, we team up with the Flash for a battle against Mars and Jupiter. It's a nice moment for Barry, but he's super underdeveloped, which is on brand for most characters in this game. Soon after, the three spirits of the lake show up to free Palkia from its chains, which immediately stops all the crazy dimensional stuff that was going on. It's over as soon as it starts, which is dumb. Also, I'm pretty sure if you started a new galaxy like this, something is gonna get screwed up in this universe. I mean, I'm no physicist, but come on, seriously? We then duke it out with Cyrus one last time before we have an opportunity to fight and catch Palkia. Professor Rowan and Dawn randomly show up to egg us on in the fight, and I'm starting to wonder where the hell the elevator is on Mount Coronet. Also, why the hell did Barry leave in such a hurry? I know I'm poking fun at it, but this whole scene is just so poorly executed. There's no stakes, there's no tension, and it's all just goofy. Back to Palkia. Say hello to our sixth team member. Crazy, I know. I gave it a lot of thought, and when do people ever use the legendary on their actual team? Never. I mean, kids do it, but as adults, have you ever used one? Probably not, so I figured, why not? I don't plan on covering the post-game extensively in this video, so I decided to lob my Master Ball at it to secure victory. With that, it's time to nickname this Sinnoh legend. What's that? You still don't believe that I'm going to use it? No, I'm seriously going to use Palkia. Fine, I'll prove it to you with this nickname. There! The Team Galactic drama is all wrapped up. And again, I know I went through it fast, but there just isn't much to it. The writing in this game is poor, so let's just move on. So, I wasn't actually serious, you know. Using Palkia? What am I, 9 years old? Nah, I'm a traditionalist, meaning I like having a flying type on my team. So, my final member is going to be Chatot, a Pokemon you can find here on Route 222. Chatot is interesting to me. It doesn't evolve, and it doesn't have great stats, yet it's locked off until so late in the main story, and I don't really understand why. Of course, it gets more intriguing than that. Back in the day, Chatot was the only Pokemon who could take advantage of the Nintendo DS's microphone. If your Chatot knew the move Chatter, you could pre-record a sound that would play every time you use the move. Can you imagine the possibilities for pre-teens to mess around with? Farting into the mic and having Chatot fart back every time you use Chatter, that was truly the pinnacle of Pokemon game design. We'll never do it better than that. I mean, I'm kidding, I never did anything like that because I was too busy using a real flying type, Starly. Still, I'm sad to report that this feature isn't available in BDSP, simply because the Switch doesn't have a built-in microphone. It's one of the small details that have been lost in the transition to this new generation, and while it's an incredibly niche feature, I know I can't be the only one who's a little disappointed that it didn't return. If you're with me on this, leave a comment below letting me know. Of course, we can still honor the legacy by visiting the Move Tutor and relearning Chatter. In exchange for one heart scale, this gentleman in Pastoria City will allow a Pokemon to relearn one of its old moves. I love that this feature exists, but I really don't think locking it behind heart scales was a good idea. A flat currency exchange makes a lot more sense, especially with how imperative this service is for competitive players who want to switch up moves on a Pokemon. Regardless, our final team is set now, and we head into the final stretch of BDSP. The layout of Sunnyshore's City just doesn't work for me. They try to blend a beachside town with futuristic walkways, and it just clashes too much, resulting in a city that looks like it can't make up its mind on what era of time it belongs to. And I know it's ironic because I just praised the world design of Sinnoh, but yeah, Sunnyshore's doesn't work. Upon entering the city, a trainer named Flint implores us to re-inspire a passion for battling in this town's gym leader. Volkner, the electric master of Sinnoh, has become bored with battling, and no one seems capable of defeating him. Before we challenge him, we must locate him somewhere in the city. It turns out he's at the local lighthouse debating whether or not to skip town to challenge the Pokemon League. There's even this cool little touch where if you peer through the binoculars, you can see he had his eyes on the home of the Elite Four. It's another great small little detail that gives this character a bit more depth, which is always appreciated. His gym battle isn't very challenging though. The lack of available Pokemon in this region is felt a lot throughout this encounter. Volkner is supposed to be an electric type user, yet his team of 4 features both an Octillery and an Ambipom, which are water and normal type respectively. They both know electric moves, but it feels like the game is being stretched very thin with their inclusions here. I mean, this is the generation that Electivire and Magnezone were introduced, so why are they not here? Don't get me wrong, I do think more gym leaders should have coverages for the types they're weak against, but this isn't the best way to go about it. Electric is only weak to ground, and the game could have covered for this by giving Volkner Lantern or Rotom Grass. Both would have had options to combat ground types, but also maintain the electric theme. I feel a real opportunity to mix up these gym battles for the better was lost in BDSP. Regardless, we defeat the once depressed gym leader, restore his passion for battling, and collect our 8th badge, granting us access to the Pokemon League. Route 223 is one of those surf routes that no one likes, and I'm starting to run out of talking points, so I'm going to instead dedicate this time to discussing the Union Room in BDSP. There's both a local and global version. In the local version, players can connect to people close by and trade or battle without Nintendo Online. However, to trade or battle with others from around the world, you must utilize a passcode system to enter a specific Union Room with that player. There is no random matchmaking, Wonder Trade, or anything of the sort. In short, competitive battling, or at least our potential to access it, has never recovered from the decision to not carry onward with the player search system of X and Y. I don't have Nintendo Online, so I can't comment on it from first-hand experience, but I've seen a lot of trainers complaining that this structure is suffocating online battling in BDSP. Without the ability to matchmake randomly, you first have to go on a third-party website or forum to find others who want to battle. From there, you gotta set up a room with a passcode, share the passcode, and only then can you battle or trade. It's way too many steps, especially for a game releasing in 2021. Pokemon simply refuses to carry on with good solutions, and it's infuriating at times. This is just another example of that feeling. I enjoyed this battle with a friend, but to me, Pokemon Showdown will always be my preferred way to participate in the competitive scene. I enjoyed building competitive Pokemon back in X and Y, but I simply don't have the time to dedicate so much to it anymore. I give props to those who do, as well as shiny hunters. Y'all have way more patience than I do. I'm glad you found something that you love doing though. Victory Road is a staple of the Pokemon series. It's one last dungeon to conquer that shows your merit and grit. a trainer truly worthy of taking a shot at becoming the champion of the region. It's full of tough trainers who use fully evolved Pokemon, which feels super refreshing after facing Bidoofs, Shellos, Croagunks, and Starlies for what seems like an eternity. These tougher mons really help signal what you're in store for, and it's always been one of my favorite traditions of the series. This one in particular is one of my favorites, as it's pretty straightforward and hard to get lost in, but it isn't a straight shot either. There's one central cavern with lots of layers. Alongside of it are two additional chambers that expand on the area's sense of scope. In one of those two chambers, you'll find a series of HM puzzles. These caves that require the player to solve miniature puzzles using HMs like Strength, Rock Smash, and Surf are nothing new to the series, but I've appreciated them more times than not. Look, I know I hated on them earlier, a tad, but they really aren't that bad, so long as the game doesn't insist on spamming too many of them in a row. In a reduced quantity like this, they force the player to think critically, which is something that battling rarely requires. Sadly. A little variety is nice, that's all I'm saying. As we emerge from Victory Road, we get one final story battle with the Flash, who uses a pretty well-rounded team of Empoleon, Staraptor, Snorlax, Heracross, Roserade, and Rapidash. I think it tells you a lot about how weak some of the new inclusions were in this generation when only half of your rival's Pokemon come from this region. It's a fine battle though, I can't knock it too much. It's a nice warm-up for what's about to occur. Well, we made it. We got all 8 badges, we made it through Victory Road, we're stocked up on healing items, and now there's only one thing left to do. Defeat the Elite Four and become the champion of the Sinnoh region. I don't have any sweeping final assessments to make here. I'm simply going to share my thoughts on each of these 5 trainers. Let's get to it. First up is Aaron, a bug-type user who uses Dustox, Vespiquen, Heracross, Beautifly, and Drapion. The 2 Hoenn bugs go down without much of a fight, but the strength of his Drapion and resiliency of his Vespiquen really impress me. Obviously, all of these matchups are biased by the team members that I choose to use, but he brought a better fight than Lucian or Bertha. In all honesty, I'd put him as the final Elite Four member and pump up his team a bit more if I was in charge. He's more than deserving of it. Bertha is a joke. She uses Whiscash, Sudowoodo, Quagsire, Golem, and Hippowdon. 1 Pokemon from her region. Yikes. A lot of the time, I find that ground-type gym leaders and Elite Four members are some of the easiest to defeat. Grass and water types are so common on teams, and ice types usually find a spot as well, at least a move slot somewhere. These type matchups, particularly grass and water, don't bode well for ground-type Pokemon due to the difference in speed stats. The latter is usually too slow to keep up with the former, and ground types usually get combined with rock types, so even more damage is received. If these Pokemon don't have Sturdy, they go down pretty quickly, and that was the case here. Piggybacking the Roserade eviscerated Bertha, making her the weakest of the Elite Four. I'm going to label Flint as one of the middlemen in the Elite Four rankings, because he really isn't hard, but he also isn't a total cakewalk. At least he wasn't this time. His inclusions, though, are hilarious, because he chose to wield fire types. Like I said all the way back at the beginning of this video, the only fire types you can find in Sinnoh's main story are Rapidash and Infernape. This makes his ace Pokemon a starter, which is kind of cool, but it's not the cherry on top, considering the rest of the team isn't fire type at all. He uses Drifblim, Steelix, and Lopunny to round out his team. He only stood a chance against me this time because his Blimp used Minimize and then baton passed it to Infernape. This allowed the monkey to dodge 3 of my moves in a row and hit back with some power of his own. If it weren't for this, Flint would have been wrecked. Lucian is the second weakest Elite Four member and doesn't really deserve the spot he occupies. He's a psychic type user who wields a Medicham, Bronzong, Alakazam, Girafarig, and Mr. Mime. A lot of these Pokemon don't have the additional type coverages or high enough defense stats to stand a chance. I whooped him. Simple as that. On the whole, these Elite Four members are pretty lackluster with little personality, making it one of the series' weakest final gauntlets. It does little to prepare you for what's coming next. Oh boy, here we go. Cynthia is the GOAT. She is the greatest NPC in the Pokemon franchise by far, and provides the toughest encounter of any trainer in any Pokemon game I've ever played. She provides the level of challenge that many players have hoped for, but sadly, she's the only one to do so in Shining Pearl, making this encounter feel like a huge difficulty spike that some players won't be ready for. She features an extremely tight and well-balanced team, which is a touch I've always appreciated. Cynthia controls a Roserade, Spiritomb, Milotic, Lucario, Gastrodon, and of course, Garchomp. This battle pushed me to my limits, forced me to consider every move a couple turns in advance, utilize my resources, and plan accordingly. Gastrodon and Lucario went down easily to my team, but the other four each presented their own massive issues. I couldn't one-shot any of them, hell, most of them I couldn't even two-shot. It meant that Roserade's move, Toxic, was supremely useful, but since the champ uses full restores, I had to plan each heal and attack with perfect accuracy to stand a chance. In the first battle, I made it to Garchomp with 4 Pokemon left. I felt confident I could survive one hit with Azumarill before hitting it with a deadly Ice Beam to finish it off in one shot. This is what happened. Garchomp saw my nickname and backhanded me and my team into a blackout. My next attempt was just as intense. I traded blow for blow with Sinnoh's best, and for a while, things seemed pretty hopeless. However, I persevered, and I made it back to Garchomp with a fighting chance, but I was devastated to see that Ice Beam hardly even did half damage to the beast, especially after it consumed a berry that cut the damage it received from ice moves. Right when all hope seemed lost, a miracle happened. I knew my only chance was to revive Azumarill to full health and pray that the power of friendship would allow me to survive one hit. And with all the cards on the table, Azumarill came through, surviving on 1 HP to make sure I wouldn't be sad. And sad I wasn't, as this deadly Ice Beam connected, Garchomp fell, and I was the new champion of Sinnoh. It only felt right. After all, Garchomp who? It was an exhilarating fight, as I knew it would be after struggling in Brilliant Diamond as well. This fight alone is what earned this game a nod on my top games of 2021 list, because it's just that good. This is what Pokemon games could be: challenging, tough, and rewarding. Cynthia is the blueprint Game Freak needs to follow. Not every trainer should be this hard, but more of them should challenge us like this. I love this battle, and I love Pokemon. With that, we register our Pokemon in the Hall of Champions and go out on top. Wait, there's more to this video? That's right. And I'm going to be honest, I'm doing BDSP a huge disservice here. I really am, and I can't ignore that. But I won't be tackling all the activities you can get involved in during the post-game of these titles. I've gotten to this point in the script, and I feel like I've said everything I want to about these games. So I'll briefly recap everything you can do in the post-game, but I won't be breaking it down at all. There's other people who dedicate much more time to tackling this content and can give you a far better assessment than I can. So after beating the champion, you can unlock the national dex by seeing every Pokemon in the regional dex. This is made easy because by the time you beat Cynthia, you'll have seen almost every Pokemon except probably the opposite legendary, in this case, Dialga. A quick pit stop in Celestic Town can take care of this for you. From there, you can finish the Pokédex, you can raise competitive teams, you can compete at the Battle Tower, you can rematch all the gym leaders and Elite Four members, you can rematch Barry, you can complete all the routes on the post-game island and catch all the many legendaries, you can explore a few new hidden pathways, and you can also go shiny hunting. And if I left something out, I'm sorry. So, as you can see, there's a fair bit of non-story related content to do in the post-game if you're so inclined. However, in all honesty, I think a lot of players will neglect this content in BDSP simply because there isn't enough mechanical satisfaction or new ideas to grapple with throughout this set of games. That, paired with the weak multiplayer component, results in a game that will probably be forgotten relatively quickly. At least that's the case for me. Well, we're at the end of the video, and I'm sorry, but there won't be some grand speech summing up the points of this video. Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl are just below average Pokemon games that failed to reignite the passion and love for an entire generation of Pokemon. Game Freak and ILCA didn't take enough risks in these games to reimagine and reinvent what a journey through Sinnoh could look and feel like. They kept everything the same, except for making those pesky HMs a little less pesky. It was very disappointing to me as I wanted to revisit this region and fall in love with it. Diamond and Pearl hold a special place in my heart because, like I said before, they were the games that made me realize I'd be a lifelong fan of this franchise. But that same magic isn't captured here. Overall, Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl are much like Sinnoh itself, dedicated to tradition regardless of the good and bad that comes along with it. Wait a minute. Perhaps that was the point the entire time. Huh. Kinda makes this whole video pointless, though. Oh well. If you watched this entire video, I salute you. Seriously, you're the best. I literally just rambled for 2 to 2.5 hours about Pokemon, but hopefully you got something out of this. I have a feeling if you're still watching, you're a big fan of the series as well. Because of this, I'd love for you to share your thoughts on the series, or at least BDSP, in the comments below. And don't worry, I'll be back with more Pokemon content after playing Legends Arceus. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Please leave a like if you enjoyed the video, consider subscribing for more, follow me on Twitter at NopNapNarp, and as always guys, have a nice day, and take care.